Let's see how we can create a Fibonacci calculator in Google Sheets. We have the Fibonacci calculator Google Sheet open, and it has the data template we require. In column A, we want the serial numbers. In column B, we want the Fibonacci numbers. In cell E1, we will write the number of terms in the Fibonacci sequence we want, that is, the number of terms we want in column B, and accordingly, the serial numbers we want in column A. For now, let's say we write 3 in cell E1, that is we want the first 3 terms of the Fibonacci sequence. So, we want the serial numbers as 1 2 3, since we want the first 3 terms of the Fibonacci sequence. To get the serial numbers in column A, we will use the sequence function. For our case, we will write equal to sequence E1, since we want the same number of rows as the value given in cell E1, columns will be 1, start 1, and step 1. We get the serial numbers 1, 2, and 3. We know that the first 2 terms of the Fibonacci sequence are 0 and 1, and the next terms are the sum of the preceding 2 terms. So, if the first 2 terms are 0 and 1, then the third term will be 0 plus 1, that is, 1. Let's just check what we get if we write equal to open curly bracket 0 semicolon 1 close curly bracket. We get 0 and 1 in 2 consecutive rows. We want these initial values 0 and 1 in the B2 and B3 cells. Let's say we use a function chooseRows to get the last term of the array in D6 to D7, that is 1. We will write equal to chooseRows, array is D6 colon D7, since we want the last term of the array, we will write -1. We get 1 as expected. Now instead of -1, if we write -2, it will give the second last term of the array, that is 0. We have checked how we can get the initial value 0 and 1 of the Fibonacci sequence, and the previous 2 terms of the sequence. The third term will be the sum of the previous 2 numbers, or the first 2 terms in the sequence, that is, the sum of 0 and 1, so the third term will be 1. So we can check, equal to chooseRows D6 colon D7, comma, -2, plus chooseRows D6 colon D7, comma, -1, we get 1, we want this as the third term. We want 0, 1, 1 if we have 3 in cell E1, that is a vertical stack of initial values 0 and 1, and the sum of the initial 2 values. We will write equal to VStack. Open curly bracket, 0 semicolon 1, close curly bracket. Comma D8, where we got the sum of the initial 2 values using the chooseRows function. So we get the array 0, 1, 1 is required. Let's delete these now. We have understood the basics of how we can get the Fibonacci sequence. Now, in cell B2, we will first use the reduce function, which reduces an array to an accumulated result. It takes initial value, array or range, and lambda as arguments. An example is shown. Initial value we will write, in curly brackets, 0 semicolon 1, because the first 2 terms of the Fibonacci sequence are 0 and 1, comma, array or range. For this we want the number of terms, 0 and 1, 2 terms already taken, so for value 3 in cell E1 we want 3 -2, 1 term, this can be arrived at using the sequence function. We will write sequence E1 -2. Again columns 1, start 1, and step 1. Then we can use the lambda function, which creates a custom function, it takes optional name, and so on, and formula expression as arguments. An example is shown. For our case, we will write lambda, name say we will write x, y, x will have 0 and 1 these terms, y will be the current value, sum of the previous two terms, sum of 0 and 1 for this particular case. Let function, which takes name 1, value expression 1, optional name 2, optional value expression 2, and formula expression as arguments. An example is shown. For our case, we will write let x a, so we want the previous term in x a. We already saw how we can get this using the choose_rows function. We will write choose_rows. X, this is the array, comma, -1. The next argument will be y a. Again we will use the choose_rows function. In this case again we will write the array as x, comma, we wanted the second last term, so row number will be -2. Comma, we wanted the vertical stack of the initial values 0 and 1, or x, and the sum of x, a, and y, a, so we will use vstack x, comma, xa plus y, a. Let's close the bracket for vstack, for let, for lambda, and for reduce. We see that we get the initial values 0 and 1, and then the third value, which is the sum of the first two values, that is 0 plus 1 is 1. Let's say we change the value in cell E1 to 4, so we get the serial numbers from 1 to 4, and in the Fibonacci sequence the fourth term, which is the sum of the second and the third terms, 1 plus 1, 2. Next, we change the value in cell E1 to 5, so we get the serial numbers from 1 to 5, and in the Fibonacci sequence the fifth term, which is the sum of the third and the fourth terms, 1 plus 2, 3. Let's say we change the value in cell E1 to 10, so we get the serial numbers from 1 to 10, and the first 10 terms of the Fibonacci sequence. Let's say in cell E3 we write n as 5. That is, we want the nth Fibonacci number in cell E4. For this, we can use the indirect function, which gives a cell reference specified by a string. It takes cell reference as a string, and optional is a1 notation as arguments. For our case, we will write indirect cell reference as a string. We have the Fibonacci numbers in the B column. We will have to do a concatenation of B and the number in cell E3 plus 1. Since the Fibonacci numbers start from row 2, first row is the title. For first term, n equal to 1, first value is in B2. So, we will write indirect concat in quotes B, comma. If we give only E3 or 5, it will give the fourth term of the Fibonacci sequence. Because it will count from the first row, which is the title row, so we will just add 1 to E3 to get the fifth value in this case. We see that the fifth term is 3. Let's say we check for the sixth term. The sixth term is 5. Next, we check for the third term. Third term is 1. If we check for the ninth term, we get the ninth term as 21. With this, we have successfully learned how to create a Fibonacci calculator, to get a sequence of Fibonacci numbers. And get the nth term of the Fibonacci sequence, in Google Sheets. Make sure the n value is less than or equal to the value given in cell E1. Thank you for your time. Please like, share, and subscribe if this video was useful.